We're now, I think, at a crossroads. There is a window of time when we can, if we get together, start to heal some of the harm that we've done. But it's not a big window, and it's closing. We must make wise choices as we move forward before it's too late.
Hello, this is Facing Future TV, and I'm going to be your host, John Liu. And we're going to talk about ecosystem restoration, healing the earth and the human spirit. I would like to also introduce Nick. NickBreeze is here as a journalist for The Ecologist. Let me say a few words before I start this video. You're going to hear Dr. Jane Goodall presenting some things about work which is going on around the world. We now have 80 ecosystem restoration communities around the world, and this movement began 7 years ago. And it began I wrote an essay called Earth Restoration Peace Camps, which was published in Permaculture magazine. And it basically showed that people could immediately go and do ecological restoration, that we don't need to wait for the COP or for further policy understandings or further research, because we can do the research together with academics in living laboratories around the world while we are growing organic soils, while we are fixing degraded waterways, while we were retaining moisture, and while we were protecting and increasing biodiversity.
Hello, I'm Jane Goodall. All the years I spent observing wild chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, made it so clear that we're not, as many once believed, the only sentient beings on the planet. Helped us to understand that we're part of and not separate from the wonderful animal kingdom.
I acknowledge all of the creatures who I consider my relatives. Those are the animals, doesn't matter what kind of animal. And I also recognize all the different plants that are my relatives.
And yet we are different, aren't we? And the greatest difference, I think, is in the explosive development of our intellect. Isn't it bizarre that this most intellectual creature that's ever walked the planet has been for years destroying its only home, Earth? How strange we haven't learned to live in peace and harmony with the natural world and with each other.
My name is Alexi Sagona, and I'm a member of the Amamutsun as well. And I'm a PhD student at UC Berkeley in environmental science, policy, and management. That vision to kind of restore the landscape, restore our culture, and heal has been something that's been like the foundation of what I'm trying to build my research upon.
We had an elder who said that our people are going to suffer for 7 generations and then things will get better. And so I'm the 7th generation. It's an opportunity. And it's a responsibility, that we have to our youth and to our ancestors.
We're now, I think, at a crossroads. There is a window of time when we can, if we get together, start to heal some of the harm that we've done. But it's not a big window, and it's closing. We must make wise choices as we move forward before it's too late.
The quality of life for future generations will be determined by how well we understand natural ecosystems and how quickly we act to ensure they are robust and resilient in the face of climate change.
The decade of ecosystem restoration is an opportunity to commit ourselves to correcting the mistakes of the past and choosing to take the pathway that leads to the restoration of degraded lands on a planetary scale.
I have witnessed that it is possible to rehabilitate fundamentally degraded landscapes, including those that have been degraded over vast areas and over long historical time.
The idea is more diversity, more abundance, more fertility, bringing all the ecosystem properties back, and that can only be done if you have the full complement of species. And that's what we're attending to here, is all the life forms.
In my many years of advocacy, I've stressed that every individual has a role to play and makes an impact on the planet every day. And that we can choose what impact we make. We can choose how we treat people, animals, and the environment. We can take action, consume wisely for conservation, think about our ecological footprint every day.
It's not about institution building. It's about empowerment of everyone to participate in restoring the earth.
Wherever you are in the world hearing this message, you have the right to grow food where you are, and that is a power that nobody can take away from you.
This place 4 years ago was just grassland, a very dry and compacted soil due to grazing land, and now it's a thriving syntropic farming system.
How we are dealing with the restoration is a planting of the coral reefs through some structures that we make on the mainland, then put them or plant them at the ocean. In result, the coral reefs have brought about a good stock of fish for the fishermen around here.
Our work at Camp Doku is all about growing bamboo and vetiver grass to provide the resources to recharge water.
Because of deforestation and conventional agricultural practices, this landscape has turned into a highly degraded one. Through regenerative agriculture, agroforestry and reforestation efforts, we're reversing this.
Using goats and permaculture tenants, we are hoping to turn this thistle scrub brush into an eco-farm for the future.
Hi.
Shalom.
Jambo.
Bonjour.
Sawadika.
Hello everyone.
Greetings, hi.
Namaste.
Hello.
My name is Ronald Kavoye, coordinator Camp Human Nature in Uganda.
Camp Altiplano in Spain.
In Belgium.
Thailand.
Guatemala.
Egypt.
Ireland.
Turkey.
The UK.
To restore the land, we must re-establish our connection with the land. We must remember we're part of the natural world and depend on it for food, water, clean air, shelter, everything. And we must restore our spiritual connection with Mother Nature. We must work together, each in our own way, to create a better world, to live in peace and harmony with each other and with all life on Earth. Our planet is in crisis, so let's make use of the window of time that we have. Let's get together to restore that which we've destroyed, for the health of the planet, for our own peace of mind, and for future generations. I really, truly hope that you'll join me and all the others who are choosing to take the flourishing path.
Well, thank you to Dr. Jane Goodall. And I would just mention that there are 80 of these ecosystem restoration communities around the world, and they're growing fast. And anybody who wants to do this is welcome to do this. And I wanted to just let Nick, as a professional journalist, he's here with the ecologist, and he's been looking at other COPs as well. And I just would like to hear what he thinks about the difference between direct action by people or more massive meetings to discuss what we should do.
Yeah, right. Well, in that sense, I think you mentioned in that video, it takes everybody. And I think when you come to a COP where you see civil society all around, and we all are all part of civil society, and you quickly realize that it's a very top-down organization. And that top-down organization means that civil society is actually hanging on the whims of a bunch of people who have actually no intention of doing what they've come here to actually do. And quite often the heads of the main people in the photo ops aren't actually here anyway. It's lawyers and lobbyists. And our fate is in their hands. And I think it comes back to something that we've discussed previously about this idea of, are we competing or are we collaborating? Because one of them can get us into a pathway to the future and the other one can't. And so that's a sort of short version, if you like.
Yes, I guess I agree with you on most of that. I think what we have seen, so I have 30 years, and I know you have a long time also following these geopolitical events, but I just came to the conclusion that personally, if I want to feel good about myself and have some satisfaction, that I'm going to have to take the knowledge that I have been gaining by documenting and studying ecological restoration on a planetary scale and just make sure that the majority of people, or the most people, can also be empowered to do this. And I think that what we're looking at now is how to optimize these communities so that the more people can join and we can all get satisfaction. Because I notice as these years go by, the kind of despair and anger and dystopic kind of thinking emerges. But I notice that everyone in the communities is having a really good time. And they're making a difference, and they're choosing to make the land and their families, their children, and their children's children have a great life.
One element that you've been talking about is agency. And agency is something that sort of moves through the COP system in different ways. In Paris in 2015, this is what I talked about a lot in my book, COPOUT. It's really that in Paris, we were all hanging on. We were watching as the world leaders told us they were going to save us. They were going to sign this agreement, and we pretty much had climate change sorted. In reality, they had no real intention of doing that. The next year, the incoming US administration caused a sort of despair in the climate world. The following year in Bonn, we saw the emergence of the youth movement, and agencies seemed to be moving away from the negotiations and towards the civil society, and especially the youths. And that itself crystallized in Poland when Greta Thunberg arrived and sort of led the movement which seemed to mature in Madrid. When the young people arrived in Madrid, it was kind of like rock stars arriving. The next year in Glasgow, civil society sort of became much more rigorous, much more, I would say, they were really gritty. They were organizing their own events. They were exploring different ways of looking at society throughout the city of Glasgow. And every time you walked into the COP, you had to walk through a sort of wall of chanting. And it felt like the agency had moved from the blue zone to the streets. And then we entered this cycle of coming to places where civil society was completely kept out of the whole thing, really. It became a much more fringe thing to have any kind of civil society voice. And that's where we are now. And I know we're moving to Brazil, and hopefully we're going to see a sort of a flipping of that. But I think, you know, this idea of agency, this idea of civil society, the idea of what John was saying in the video about everyone being involved is absolutely critical, because Jane Goodall said we've got this small window of opportunity. Johan Rockström's talked about the operating space for humanity that is shrinking. This is the reality that we live in, and it requires the agency of all of us to actually push that threshold back whilst we really do get the emissions out of the system. And it will only be people who do that. It's not going to be these people at the G20, and it's not going to be the negotiators in here.
Did you want to say something?
Thank you so much. My name is Amkodi Cyrus Kabale. I'm from Uganda. Uganda is based in Africa. On the video, I was very interested to see that there was someone from Uganda.
Yes.
I'm very happy to hear that you are working in our country. Where I come from, we are seeing there is increased population encroaching on the habitats of the animals. For example, I'll use a landscape of Maxon National Park, where we are increased encroachment on the park, and we are seeing that these wild animals are coming back into the communities. I think 2 weeks back, there was an elephant that entered into the communities, and we had one person who was killed by an elephant. And in the revenge, what also human beings are doing is to kill these wild animals. So as communities, we've been supporting these communities with alternative revenue options, where we are training them on beekeeping, especially they put them along the national parks, so that these wild animals, they don't come out, but also communities are also benefiting out of it. For example, in terms of beekeeping, where they're harvesting the honey, packaging and harvesting it, and they're selling it also to benefit communities.
Thank you. Okay. I think one of the things that we've seen is that actually the way we're considering the economy, that it's materialistic, that we believe apparently that money is coming and the value is in buying and selling things. And so we're saying that all the things, our phones, our computers, our cars, are more valuable than the forests or the air or the rivers. And I think this is untrue. The reality is that the true value is in ecological function, because that ecological function lasts for eternity. It's here. It doesn't need to be dissipated. It's only dissipated when we believe that the things that human beings make are more valuable than the things that, well, let's say God made or that evolution created over time. And when you realize that in these long waves, the oceans, the rivers, the air, the soil, and the vegetation, that is where the true value is. And when we think that the things that we make, which actually, this is a few years old and it's getting old, it's going to be dead, it's a piece of junk, is the reality. And so it's a shiny object that we look at for a moment, but it doesn't last. And so we need to value what is truly valuable. And what's happening in these ecosystem restoration communities is they create a new economy. And that economy is also one of caring and of sharing with each other. So if we all share, we all have everything. But if we all want to gather as much material possessions to ourselves as we possibly can, then we're pretending that these things are more valuable and we deserve. And if I were a very clever person who wanted to become a billionaire or a trillionaire, and I had gathered all this stuff to myself, what's the point of that? How does that help anyone? And I'm going to die, and I don't think I win anything if I die with more stuff than anybody else. So we need to think about this as a species. We need to have collective intelligence about what's going on. And the way we answer these questions is together. We don't do it individually, and we certainly don't give our power away to corporations or governments who don't actually think that they're doing it for the good of all. They're doing it for special interests or their own interests. And this is something that we need to realize, that they're making a choice. And it doesn't take 29 cops to decide that you have an existential threat to human civilization and the earth from the changes in the climate. It takes looking at the situation. So if we had reacted 32 years ago when this was first being discussed, we could have solved many of these things. And all the people in the ecosystem restoration communities are saying, okay, we're done. We're going to just do the work because it has to be done. And we're going to believe, to trust that eventually the society will understand how much value it is being created if we have, for instance, botanical sanctuaries where we save the most endangered species, or we restore the hydrological cycle. Well, I'm getting into a rant. Nick, you have final words? We have 3 minutes.
Okay, well, I would say that there's a sort of a bridge that we have to find from where we are now to what you're proposing. I mean, I notice in my hometown in the UK, most of the shops in the local town are all boarded up. Most people in that town are more concerned about their welfare within the system that we're in. So how do you transition from one system on such a large scale that we're talking about is something we have to try to articulate. There are many people working on these kinds of things. I think it does have to extend beyond our communities. I think we have to live way more sort of beyond boundaries, whereas most vested interests are trying to confine us within boundaries, keep reminding us of our flags and our national interests and this kind of stuff, which is undermining our efforts.
Well, I've noticed that in communities, some of them are making their own economies and they're sharing with each other. I know that like the Amish communities, when a young couple gets married, the whole community comes and builds them a house. So they start their married life not with a debt to a financial institution, but with a debt to their community of kindness, of gratitude. And so the next time a young couple gets married, they are the first ones to help them build the house. So I think this is the way forward, sharing. We can all have shared mobility. We can have creator spaces. We can have all of these things if we decide that that's what we want. And if we decide we're satisfied with what's going on, then good luck. But there'll be a lot of people in ecosystem restoration communities that are playing music and having really good meals and not bothering with that. So we look forward to going to ecosystemrestorationcommunities.org if you have an interest, and check out Nick's book.
Yeah, it's available online.
Available anywhere. It's called COPOUT.